So you want to make a pretty realistic Spider-Man helmet, and you're not really sure where to start. Well, here's how I do it, and the files I use come from Yoast Studios. You can kind of use this tutorial with just about any file set. This is just the one I prefer to make. I think it comes out probably the most realistic. And in all honesty, this is a super easy build. This is one that you can take from zero to hero very quickly. And it's a good way to get into using your airbrush with some very basic beginning steps and processes that you can use to kind of accentuate a lot of starter builds. Now, I'm going to assume with this that you've already printed out the file that you want to use, scaled it to your head, and you're basically ready to get started. Now, this is one of very few helmets that I ever worry about the base color being anything specific. For mine, I like to use nuclear red from Juanmakes. If you're interested in some of that filament, you can go to juanmakes.com and pick yourself up a roll or two and use my code JM10 at checkout to get yourself 10% off your order. Now, this only works with your very first order through them, so I recommend stocking up on filaments. Now, with that being said, we're going to assume again that you've already printed the files. Again, I'm using the one from Yoast Studios, so without further ado, let's get started.
Try to get me in the room, yeah. Everybody wanna talk, why? Always coming with the tunes, they know I'ma take it far, right?
Now, when I said this was going to be a really easy one, I really meant it. It's really just a couple of pieces, and we're going to make it really simple. You're going to need some acrylic markers like these. This is a brand new pack I picked up specifically for this tutorial. So we want to start by shaking up the marker really well. And we want to bleed it into the tip of the marker. So I'm just pressing down on it and continuing to bleed it over and over until we get the paint all the way to the tip of the marker. Now, these specific markers have a chiseled tip. And what that means is that it's going to fit in the groove of this helmet really well. So where you see all the webbing come down on the helmet where it would need to be black, the tip of the marker just kind of fits in there very nicely. Now, again, you're going to have a little bit of a steady hand, but don't overthink this because we're going to be airbrushing, which can hide some of the mistakes. So don't get super crazy and just go all over the place, and definitely take your time and try to follow the lines the best you can. Now, again, I want to reiterate, this will take a little bit of practice to kind of get it right, but once you kind of figure it out, it's really simple. One thing I would recommend that everybody try to do is follow your lines in one complete stroke. Don't stop and restart in the same one if you can avoid it. But I like to work from the vertical lines going straight down or straight up all at one time, and then I'll come back in the other direction and try to make sure I'm hitting all of the other lines going horizontally. Now, I will say you will miss stuff. It's gonna happen. Sometimes your eyes just play tricks on you, and it's not always the easiest thing to see every single line. Now, you'll have plenty of opportunities to kind of touch these things up, so don't beat yourself up over it. Mistakes happen, and it's just part of the game, so you have to learn to kind of roll with the punches in a way. Now, again, I'm just kind of going over these lines, taking my time to follow them as cleanly as I can. And there may be a few that you may have to go over a second time to get them as dark as you want them. But keep in mind, we are going to come back again with the airbrush and kind of fill these lines out to give them some more depth and a little more texture. So again, you'll have plenty of opportunities to come back and clean some of these lines up if need be. But it's really that simple. That's really it for the first step. Now, I went ahead and already placed magnets in this helmet. And my reasoning for that is it's a pretty simple process. Most everything that Yoast Studios puts out uses an 8x2mm magnet for most of your magnet holes on pretty much all of his helmets. Now, again, I will stress to you that anytime you scale up your model, you're also scaling the holes for those magnets. So if you're like me and you have to scale the helmet up a little bit, keep in mind some of those magnet holes might be a little loose. But I have a very simple remedy I like to go with for this helmet particularly. Now, you'll see me place the eyes in just to get a feel for the way it's going to look. But on the back here, as you can see, I have the magnets in on the sides. And I like to just find a small piece of elastic. Now this is just cheap elastic that I got off Amazon. I'm going to cut a piece and I'm just going to hot glue it in the back to kind of create a hinge. Now, this kind of stops the ability for the back of it to fall off, but also when I'm allowing people to try these on at different shows, it makes it a little bit easier where people aren't afraid to kind of put the helmet on and take it off. And it also saves me the headache of things getting dropped all over the floor, because believe me, it happens. Now, I would recommend, because hot glue burns, it doesn't feel good to put it on your fingers. So keep yourself a piece of foam laying around. This is just a simple piece of EVA foam that I use to kind of press the glue into the places that I want it to go, so I'm not burning my fingers. Now, I use high temp black hot glue. That's just my preference. You can use just regular old low temp clear hot glue if you want to. There's other colors. This is just my preference. It's what I happen to have on hand and what I like to use. Yes, it doesn't look beautiful on the inside of the helmet, but truth be told, nobody's really bothering with that. Now on to the next part, and this is another very easy one that is super fantastic. This is just white PC mesh. This is the fan mesh that you use in a desktop computer. All we're gonna do is get a pack of that off Amazon. It comes in a pack of, I think, like 20. Super cheap stuff, but has a huge effect on the look of the helmet. Gives it a much more realistic look. Now, one of the coolest things is that you can paint this, you can draw on it, you can do whatever you need to do to make it look the way you want. I prefer to go with either black or white as my starting colors. If I'm going to be painting it, I usually tend to use the white. Now, I just take a pencil, I line it up, and I draw out the shape that I want by just tracing the insert of the eye. Now, I will tell you to always, always, always sneak up on your cuts. Never try to cut them perfect on the first run. And if you do this, you're going to screw it up. You're always better off having a little extra that you can trim away than to not have enough. So take your time with this, trace it correctly, and make sure it fits in there nicely. Again, you can trim this as many times as it takes, and I would highly recommend only working on one lens at a time. Don't try to shortcut this part. I guarantee if you do, you'll be recutting lenses over and over and over. Now, you'll see me kind of fidget with this a little bit and kind of flex it into place. Just take your time. Again, put a little dab of glue. You don't need a ton, and try not to get it all over the inside of the lens, because the glue that you use, especially if you use like a darker color like I do, like the black, it will press through the lens and it just looks terrible from the outside. So again, take your time, put a little bit on, smear it around, let it cool off, and then set it off to the side, and you can always add more in a little bit. Now again, I can't stress this enough. Only work on one of these at a time. If you don't work on just one at a time, you are going to screw this part up. I do it all the time. I try to get ahead of myself and try to do multiples at the same time, and I always end up messing at least one of them up. So again, cut around the outside, take your time. You're not in any type of hurry. So cut these a little wider than your template that you have created by just tracing around, and then sneak up on the cut. Very simply, just cut them a little bit at a time until they fit in exactly right. And then once you have it set where you want it, add a small dab of hot glue and repeat the process all over again. And there you go. We have a completed set of lenses. Now we're going to set these off to the side and let them cool. And we're going to come back and work on the airbrushing part of this whole entire process. Now you're going to just need a basic airbrush and just some plain black. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. I like to use this opaque by Createx. I find that this paint works really good. It's pretty easy to spray. We're going to put a little reducer into the airbrush. We're going to add just a little bit of paint. I like to start with around a 50-50 mixture and then kind of go from there. If I'm having a hard time getting it to spray, I'll add a little bit more reducer or water. These are water-based paints, so you can kind of thin them out with water if you like. I prefer to just use reducer because it's what I have. Now you want to mix this up really well and just make sure that it's spraying out of the airbrush before we ever spray any paint on our project. You always want to have a test panel or something to spray a little bit on. And then all we're going to do is start with the eyes, and we're just going to fog in the shading. We're not doing anything elaborate here, just very smooth, simple, steady strokes. And just try to keep the airbrush moving. Don't sit in one spot. Don't keep going over things over and over. We're just building up layers little by little. We might go over this helmet 2 or 3 times. The more you get comfortable with it, you'll kind of know the amount of paint you want to put down. But all we're doing is kind of fogging in these lines. And what this is going to do is give us a little more of a weathered, kind of realistic look, as if it's fabric instead of plastic. Now you'll notice here that I went and re-grabbed my pen because there was just a line here that I didn't feel like looked as clean as I wanted it to. So I just went back in and touched it up really quickly. Again, you're going to miss some things. It happens, but don't be afraid to fix your mistakes and don't be afraid to work through some of them and improvise sometimes. Everything's not going to go smooth. It's not always going to go perfect, and mistakes are going to happen. Sometimes you may have to come back in with some red paint and touch up some areas that didn't come out perfect. But again, I like to work top to bottom, bottom to top, and just kind of fog in some of these lines little by little. It doesn't take much. This is, again, one of the easiest helmets to add a little bit of airbrush work to that really takes it to another level. Now, all I'm going to do is just kind of follow the lines around little by little. Again, shading them in very, very lightly. And I always tell everybody, practice, practice, practice. Find a piece of cardboard or a piece of paper or a countertop or something that doesn't matter, and just put a little paint down and get the feel for getting the paint to come out of the airbrush cleanly. Again, if you're struggling to get the paint to come out, it might need to be thinned out just a little bit more. Don't be afraid to add a little bit more paint or add a little bit more reducer or even water if you're using waterborne paints. Those are what I recommend to anybody starting out airbrushing, is the Createx waterborne paints. Again, there's a lot of knockoff paints on the Amazon and TikTok, all these different places. Most of them are pretty usable. You just have to learn to get your airbrush set up correctly and make sure that you're taking your time with it. That's the most important part of this. Don't overdo it. Light coats, you're just building up shadowing, especially with this helmet. Again, as you can see here, I'm just kind of going over lines 1 or 2 times and very lightly building and building and building, and I'll keep circling around this helmet over and over until I'm happy with the way it looks. Now, we have to keep in mind here that we don't want these to be completely black. Like, we don't want to darken these out so much that it looks unrealistic. So just take your time, give it a few seconds to dry between coats, and you can kind of come back in. You'll see me kind of cleaning up my brush here and cleaning stuff out. And then we're going to move on to the next part. So now that everything's had a few minutes to dry, I like to just test fit the lenses and make sure everything looks good. We're going to go back over to the other bench. And with a lot of helmets, you'll see that they have magnets for the eye sockets and stuff. This isn't a helmet that I swap out lenses all the time, so there's no real reason not to just glue them in place. Now, you can use this high temp hot glue. This seems to work pretty good for most applications. Don't overdo it. Or you can just use super glue. Either way, with a little bit of activator, should get you kind of into the process there. Again, you can see the hinged back. It's just a really great way to get this helmet looking as real as possible. So there you have it, a finished Spider-Man helmet that looks super real, super easy, and takes your paint game to a whole nother level. If you guys love tutorials like this, stick with me on the Patreon because there's so much more coming. Thank you guys so much for being part of this journey with me. I really appreciate you.